Hey, Spuds, it's Jamie. Welcome back to another video if that's on the channel. I don't know, but welcome either way. And today we are back with another episode of calling out JK Rowling's recent transphobia. Yay! It's basically something I could make on a monthly, if not weekly basis because of the amount of transphobic she spurts out online. Anyway, we're here to look at some of the more outrageous things she's been saying recently, and also some call-outs against what she's been saying. That's why I think it's important to make this video, because I think she just chucks out all of this stuff, all of this fear-mongering, misinformation, everything. I don't even know what she believes at this point, whether she actually believes what she's saying or she just wants to be hurtful towards trans people. I don't know, but I think it's really important to maintain a presence of calling her out on stuff and showing how much bullshit it is. So that's what today's video is about. I did want to kick off the video with something positive because I'm filming this the day after this year's Trans Pride in London. I unfortunately could not make it. I'm gutted. I want to make it next year. However, it was record-breaking for a trans pride. 100,000 people showed up, and I believe that was up 40,000 on the 60,000 turnout from last year. And in a time when it's really scary to be trans in the UK at the minute, people are coming out in force. You cannot silence the trans community. The more you try and push us down, the louder we are going to show up for our rights, because we deserve them, because trans rights are human rights. So yeah, the trans community showed up, trans allies showed up, and I just wanted to kick off with a little positive thing before we get into the more negative topic of JK Rowling. Are you ready? This post is so irony that an anemic person just recovered. Oh, like the irony of it. JK Rowling. Attention, all men telling me I look like a trans woman. I'm sensing that this isn't meant as a compliment. In fact, the implication seems to be that trans women look male or odd or ugly. This is appallingly transphobic, and I'll thank you to take your bigotry off my timeline. It either reads as sarcastic or ironic, and I don't know which one it is. I honestly cannot tell, but somebody has written an analysis of the tweet. They're not saying she looks like a trans woman, they're saying she looks like she'd be transvestigated by the same standards based on appearance she herself uses to judge other women's gender on, which is a ridiculous way to judge anyone's gender. She has actually been transvestigated multiple times, because really transvestigators aren't about anything logical. Some of them do still base stuff off of gender stereotypes, typical norms of the features you'd expect somebody assigned female at birth to have versus somebody assigned male at birth who's not taken any kind of HRT that would be for the opposite birth sex. So things like women with an Adam's apple or a stronger jaw, or who are taller or with bigger hands, and then men who have more shapely hips or smaller shoulders or smaller hands or a small head or things like that. Like, it's still all arbitrary, but that's kind of where transvestigation started, and it's dissolved into partly a massive conspiracy theory that anybody famous is famous because they've sold their soul and they've had to trans to get there, like transitioning and being trans was the price for their fame and money. I know. And also, as well as sometimes just the most ridiculous things. So yes, actually, based on the standards that transvestigators use, JK Rowling would be open to being transvestigated, and that is what people are saying. And it's not saying anything about ugliness. She is the one inferring that because she thinks it herself. I think that is a very, very good observation. An interesting thing is that several unpleasant female characters in the Harry Potter books are described as heavy-faced. I never knew exactly what that meant until Paula Hamilton on Britain's Next Top Model also used heavy-faced to describe herself. If you're curious, Google pics of Paula Hamilton. She looks like JKR, in my opinion. Same kind of face shape as Iman Khalif too. Very interesting. I will Google Paula Hamilton. I think I see it. Yeah. I mean, the thing is, I think transvestigation is all bullshit. I think these stereotypes and like what you should look like as a woman and as a man is utter bullshit. Putting my mindset where transvestigators come from. You look at a photo of JK Rowling, she has a strong jawline, quite a wide chin, and like a hint of an Adam's apple. They are all things that would lead to somebody being transvestigated. So yes, she probably would be. And I do see the point this person is making in comparing her to somebody like Paula Hamilton, who I hadn't heard of, but I do see the visual similarities between them. There's a reason why so many models have strong bone structure and why Iman Khalif got so many high fashion jobs, and it's not because it looks ugly, but JKR writes those features as ugly when it's the kind of features she could be described as having herself, and also the kind of features she transvestigates other women for. I don't think you have to reach too far into armchair psychology to say something is going on there with her own insecurities. I wouldn't be surprised. For the record, I think the most beautiful people look androgynous. I think there might be some studies backing that up, and personally I think it's part of what drives a lot of transvestigators. They're really just attacking conventional beauty standards they don't fit into. Yeah, JK Rowling saying that to be compared to a trans woman would be to be told that you are odd looking or ugly or you look like a man, when I think the poster is right. That is her view of trans women. That is reflecting her internal bias, her very, very strong bias against trans women, and viewing trans women as nothing but ugly men. Now, we might all have had enough, very much enough of JK Rowling, but I wanted to have a little break in this video to talk about something way more positive that I've definitely not had enough of, and that is introducing you to today's video sponsor, June's Journey. I say introduce, I have spoken about June's Journey multiple times on the channel before. You spuds know how much I love a good mobile game, and you really don't get much better than June's Journey. Visualize it, okay? A hidden object mystery game set in the glitz and glamour of the 1920s. You'll follow protagonist June Parker, an amateur detective on the case of her sister's murder, as she uncovers plenty of other secrets along the way. You'll challenge your observation skills by finding objects and revealing clues within beautiful scenery. You maybe remember this video I made recently where I told you about how my tuna sandwich was callously stolen. And after discovering a couple of clues, I think I might have a prime suspect. But is it too obvious? In episode 1, I uncovered clues, an empty plate, and a guilty looking cat that led me to retracing my steps to where this crime started, the kitchen. If a cat really did steal it, he might be back to look for more. Let's find these clues. All right, tuna can. Aha, licked empty, I see. Oven gloves. What's next? Kettle. And the final clue, a crisp packet. Aha! Open and empty. A cat couldn't have done that. I know where I need to go next. If you enjoyed that, then you'll love June's Journey even more, because on top of finding clues, you can also express yourself creatively by decorating your very own island. Check out my island. My fave area is my Venice bit, but I do also love my little railway system. I love the whole thing, to be honest. Finally, and one of my fave bits of the game is all the little extras and the special events. June's Journey has genuinely been my go-to mobile game for years now. It helps me avoid doom scrolling, and I really love that feeling of mastering a scene and getting the top score. If you like the sound of June's Journey, and I personally really can't think of a reason why you shouldn't like the sound of June's Journey, then go download it for free by clicking the link in my description box or scanning this very handy QR code. Go on, I'll give you a second to do it. You know you want to scan that QR code. Play that mobile game. And June's Journey is available on iOS and Android mobile devices as well as PC. And do stay tuned for the tuna sandwich finale coming very soon. Now let's get back to something that is far less pleasant. Pedro Pascal shuts down Rowling, defends trans rights, and reflects on fame at 50. We all love Pedro, right? Love Pedro on this channel. But JK Rowling retweeted this and said, "Can't say I feel very shut down, but keep at it, Pedro. God loves a trier." He's actually doing great things, and I appreciate her encouraging him to carry on. I think he should carry on. So somebody asked JK Rowling, how are you planning to police public toilets? She said, quite easily really. Decent men will stay out as they always have. Interesting. So we can assume all who don't are a threat, given their disregard for women's and girls' safety, privacy, and dignity. Photographing, reporting, and disseminating such men's images online will be a piece of cake. This is so horrendously misguided. If it wasn't harmful, it really is laughable. It is so on another planet to what is actually happening in reality. It's a worldview that has no relevance in the real world, in the sense of when you put it onto trans people and the fact that she's coming at this from a transphobic perspective and referring to trans women as those men who have no regard for women's and girls' safety, privacy, and dignity, and that we should report those men. In reality, the most likely place for a woman to be attacked is their own home or an open space like a parking lot. Toilets are really very far down the list, and predatory cis men have always been able to access women's spaces like toilets and changing rooms because there is no magical lock on the door. By being transphobic when it comes to bathrooms, you are just making it easier for cis men to gain access to that, because if spotted entering a woman's facility and questioned, if you are forcing trans women into men's and trans men into women's, that cis man can just say he is a trans man. Much easier than non-existent instances of predatory cis men dressing as women. Yes, really, the predatory cis men who want to go and attack a woman are really dressing as a woman, when they are the very men who see femininity and womanhood as a bad thing. But yes, they're pretending to be women just to walk into a bathroom that they could just walk into anyway. It all just takes away attention, time, resources from the actual threat to all women's safety, which is predatory cis men who are attacking women in their own homes, not the bathroom. And plus, there are men who are toilet attendants and cleaners who go into the women's. There are literally signs outside many women's bathrooms that say there may be a male member of staff who comes in and cleans this bathroom. All a cis man would have to do is pick up a mop. And this feeds back to the first post where she basically described trans women as ugly men. She assumes that she's gonna be able to, and anybody is gonna be able to instantly tell when a trans woman enters a bathroom. But you can't, and we're seeing really strong evidence that you can't. We knew it anyway, but the fact that so many cis women are now being harassed for being in the women's space because they are more masculine presenting, it is bananas. So many cis women are assumed to be trans women, and so many trans women are assumed to be cis women because something called human variation happens, where there is not a set standard that everybody looks to, and there is not a set mold that everybody fits into just because of their gender identity. Doesn't make sense. Shut the F up and go back to writing books. Nobody gives an F about your opinion on shit else except magic. Honestly, when you write something as successful as Harry Potter, why would you start just being so vehemently bigoted so publicly? Why? Was being loved children's author billionaire not fulfillment enough in her life? Anyway, she responded to this by saying, my opinion on magic is the same as my opinion on women with penises. Neither are real. Well, that is denying reality because trans women exist. Like, come on. It's just so silly. However, if you want to prove me wrong, by all means, jump off a roof on a broomstick. I really feel like that crosses a line. That is not okay to say. Somebody, yes, with swear words, has said, look, just stop it. Why, when you are a children's author with no personal experience of trans people or the trans community, why have you decided to speak so much about the trans? Like, just stop it, please. People do not want your opinion on this. This is not your specialty, not your area of knowledge. Why does that warrant her saying, jump off a roof on a broomstick? And why is it when trans people and trans allies get angry at JK Rowling and say things, that's all people comment on? They don't call her out on her bullshit. They sympathize with her and victimize her, and they're like,
oh, she gets so much hate though. Oh, I think we should be nicer to her.
But then when she tells somebody to jump off a roof on a broomstick, where's the same energy? So somebody's clearly replied to something maybe that JK Rowling said or that somebody else said about, I'm assuming, calling out the myth that children, like 12-year-olds, are having surgeries and taking testosterone and estrogen and things. So Rowling is replying to somebody who's talking about trans kids and transitioning and has said, telling children that puberty is harmful to them is grossly unethical. Like, where are kids being told that puberty is harmful? If these people see it as wrong for kids who are
too young to know their gender because that's what they think,
that they cannot possibly like even socially transition or pursue puberty blockers in their early teenage years, why do they think it's okay for cis kids to go through puberty? If it's not okay for a 16, 17-year-old, which would be very rare for a 16 or 17-year-old to access testosterone, especially nowadays, it's always been very uncommon, but say a 17-year-old started testosterone and is a trans man, why is that so wrong that as a 17-year-old they are now going through puberty that is correct for their gender, but it was okay for the cis boy at 12, 13 to start puberty with testosterone and cause irreversible changes? There are far more trans people who go through the wrong puberty than there are people who transition and regret it. So actually, according to transphobes of being like,
oh, well, it's bad for kids to go through irreversible changes to their body that may not be right for them later on,
then nobody should go through puberty. We should be giving puberty blockers to everybody till they're 18. Now, I don't think that is right. I don't think we should do that. But why is it that cis kids are trusted in their gender identity but not trans kids? You trust cis kids enough to let them go through an irreversible process, but you don't trust trans kids enough, so therefore they are forced to go through the incorrect irreversible process. I had to have top surgery because I went through the incorrect puberty for my gender. I was never told puberty was harmful though. Most gender dysphoria resolves after puberty. That is a myth. Started with some very, very poor research on the desistance number. It's debunked. It was not correct. It was methodologically flawed. There has been follow-ups. They've actually shown that at a 5-year follow-up, 97.5% of kids still identify as trans 5 years later. That is throughout the process of like adolescence and into puberty. And actually, gender dysphoria gets worse at puberty. That's what the research shows. So JK Rowling is saying most gender dysphoria resolves after puberty, and there's mounting evidence that blockers cause irreparable harm. Blockers have been used for decades. As with any other medication, there are possible side effects, but when taking this medication, like any other medication, it is closely monitored. Doses are closely monitored and altered if needs be, and medications are stopped if they're causing issues for specific patients, as they can do with any type of medication. The biggest thing you need to look at when questioning, are puberty blockers bad? Who has been banned from taking puberty blockers? Have puberty blockers been banned as a medication because they are just blanket bad, or have they been banned for trans kids? The answer is they've been banned for trans kids. Cis kids can still freely access puberty blockers if they start puberty too young, which is called precocious puberty. I think there are also some other uses for the same drugs that are used in puberty blocker type ways, and they have not been stopped either. It is literally just in the use of delaying puberty in trans kids that puberty blockers are suddenly seen as dangerous, when actually there's a history of them being used. There's decades worth of time of puberty blockers being used. And I watched a really interesting reel recently that was somebody talking about the fact that actually all medicine doesn't have that long a history, and the biggest medical breakthroughs were found because people did things without there being a massive time. Like for us to have decades worth of people taking puberty blockers is really quite very good within medicine. There are so many drugs that have only been available for a very short amount of time, and there's only a few years worth of evidence, but because they're not trans related, nobody's throwing a tantrum about it. So it's just an important question to ask. Is it just for one group of people, or is it for everybody taking this medication? The medication cannot be that harmful because it is still being prescribed to so many people, just not trans kids. And by so many people, I mean kids. It's just not trans kids specifically. It will never cease to shock me how many people pushed for the chemical castration of children. People are just supporting other human beings living their lives authentically. Like, this is all just fear-mongering. It will never cease to shock me how many people just couldn't stay in their own lane in life and let others get on with their lives. It will never cease to shock me how so many people want to use their time and their money and their effort and their lives to take away the rights of others, to spread lies about a marginalised group within society. A few years ago, a trans activist on here said to me, imagine if you woke up in a man's body tomorrow, you'd still be a woman, right? Well, no, I'd be a man. Admittedly quite a confused man, but definitely a man. The clue would be the penis and balls. But she's saying she'd be quite a confused man. Why is that? Because you'd actually wake up going, but I'm a woman. That's why you'd be quite confused. JK Rowling says she absolutely knew Harry Potter fans would be deeply unhappy over trans views. Author also said she called her management team and told them, you cannot argue me out of this. I would have been so stressed if I were on her management team. So she knew it would cause upset. Is there not like a pause of being like, hold on a second, if this would cause so much upset, should I rethink this? Is there a reason why it would cause so much upset? Is there a reason why so many people who resonated with a story that, albeit has a ton of flaws and is not okay in of itself, but also does have messages of standing up for what's right and for it not mattering who you are born or what you're born, but who you become, and of like the underdog prevailing and good over evil and all of this stuff, did it not occur that the people that those messages and that story resonated with, the fandom used to be very, very LGBTQ+. Very, like so many gay and trans kids found so much comfort in Harry Potter and still did as adults. That's why there is so much shock and so much dislike and so much hurt towards JK Rowling, because I think a lot of people were like, how could this story and this message that resonated so much to me as an LGBTQ plus person be written by somebody with these kind of views? It doesn't compute. But then when you look at other elements of it, it does kind of make sense. And maybe she just got the good guys and the bad guys twisted. She thinks she's Harry Potter, but actually she's Dolores Umbridge. Oh, interesting. Okay, there is actually a post that plays into what I just said a little bit. When asked what she would say to people who claim she's become like the villains in her books, Rowling said, I would say that some of you have not understood the books. What like a non-answer of just like,
oh, well, if you think I'm a villain, then you've clearly not got it.
So she does. She thinks that she's the Harry Potter side, not the Voldemort, Dolores Umbridge, Death Eater side. The Death Eaters claimed, we have been made to live in secret and now is our time, and any who stand in our way must be destroyed. If you disagree with us, you must die. But they didn't always live in secret secret, did they? They were there, they were present. They killed a lot of people. They were very evil. They caused a lot of harm. And then there was a pushback against the harm they were causing. This is actually describing bigots, because they are bigots. They demonized and dehumanized those who were not like them, as in the Death Eaters demonized and dehumanized those who were not like them. That is exactly what's happening to the trans community. I cannot believe that the lack of concept of reality with some transphobes goes so deep that they actually think that they are the ones being demonized and dehumanized. JK Rowling not saying anything transphobic would have only altered her life in the sense that she would not have been called a transphobe, but she would still have all the same rights, the same life. She'd have her money. There was no need for her to do that. The trans community were not going after anybody. The only thing the trans community have ever gone after is equal human rights. She said, "I'm fighting what I see as a powerful, insidious, misogynistic movement that has gained huge purchase in very influential areas of society." It's really scary when you hear the viewpoint that some of these people are coming from. Like, the amount of lies that are being said about the trans community that are so easy to dismantle. I'm not just saying this as a trans person. Factually, what transphobes say about the trans community is deeply flawed. It is incorrect. The science, the medical boards, and the existence of trans people in the first place proves transphobes wrong. Transphobes are the ones that are demonizing and dehumanizing a marginalized communities. They are demonizing trans women and scapegoating trans women for the crimes committed by predatory cis men. They're dehumanizing the trans community by making us sound like some big, scary, monolithic group that wants to destroy the world, when all trans people want is to be able to live as their authentic selves, have access to appropriate healthcare that all of the medical boards agree they should have, by the way, and have the basic rights within things like getting married and the workplace so as not to be discriminated against. That is it. What transphobes want, and I'm not saying this has come specifically from JK Rowling, but what we have seen from those with similar views to her is they want trans people removed from public life. They want the eradication of trans people from society. I mean, come on. I don't even get angry when I read stuff like this. I get really confused. And I get really sad, in a way, that somebody has so deeply misunderstood the world, reality, facts, science, humanity, that this is what they think of the trans community. It shocks me. It truly shocks me. This was actually scary to read, that JK Rowling truly believes that trans people are powerful and insidious and influential shows the depths of her hatred because it's demonstrably untrue. Yep. She also said, "I do not see this particular movement as either being benign or powerless, so I'm afraid I stand with the women who are fighting to be heard against threats of loss of livelihood and threats to their safety." We're talking about a community with some of the highest rates of violence against them, particularly trans women, some of the highest rates of poor mental health, genuinely low life expectancy due to violence and poor mental health, lack of access to healthcare, and a community that literally barely gets any mainstream coverage unless it's posed as a debate, where trans people literally have to debate their existence with hateful bigots. And most of the time when you see trans topics being discussed on mainstream media platforms, it's just bigots there talking about it. And actually see cis allies being asked to speak more on it now than actual trans people. And that's a kind of small step in the right direction. But if we're such a powerful community, why have we never been able to even speak for ourselves? She's also said, "Time will tell whether I've got this wrong. I'm willing to be wrong on this. I can only say that I've thought about it deeply and hard and long, and I've listened, I promise, to the other side." Bullshit. Genuinely, I call the deepest, stinkiest, biggest pile of bullshit on that, and I believe absolutely that there is something dangerous about this movement and it must be challenged. It sounds like brainwashing, like somebody has been brainwashed. A tweet that she retweeted, somebody said, "Queer was never joyous. It wasn't joyous when my fellow gay men were being beaten to death by homophobes screaming the word at them, and it isn't joyous now when it is used by men who beat women up and the corporations that support them. Get your shit off our flag." The word queer it's definitely become a reclaimed word in recent times, and individual people are absolutely allowed to do that. I use it when talking generally or about myself. I will not use it about a specific person in case they are not comfortable with that. But it is up to everybody who's within the LGBTQ plus community. It's their individual choice whether they want to use that word. But to blame that on the trans community, and then also that's scrubbing out those chevrons, those are representative of the trans community, of people of color within the LGBT plus community, and representative of HIV and AIDS. So you're not just like, what? Like that, like the transphobia goes so hard that you can't even recognize that you're now pushing beyond that. You're just like, get this shit off my flag, like get the trans off my flag, and get the representation for people of color, and get the representation for people with HIV and AIDS off the flag. Like, that's not even specific to trans people. Like, that reads as racist as well, and denying the AIDS epidemic that happened, and the majority of people that died from AIDS were gay men. Like, that's just denying the history of also cis LGBT plus people. And she retweeted that. Daniel Radcliffe moderates trans and non-binary youth roundtable for the Trevor Project. He said, if you're going to talk about trans kids, it might be useful to actually listen to trans kids. And here we circle back to the thing that I called the biggest, stinkiest, steamiest pile of shit. Somebody said, when JK Rowling spread a load of pseudoscience about trans kids, rapid onset gender dysphoria for one, rapid onset gender dysphoria is awful, I've made a whole video about it if you're interested, Mermaids offered to broker a discussion with some trans youth to get the truth. She pointedly ignored the offer, not wanting to hear from the kids she was lying about. Well, 1 in 3 across UK are overdue for cervical cancer screening. Screening rates are declining, with some parts of England at greater risk due to low uptake of HPV vaccine. What did JK Rowling have to say about this? How could she possibly spin this? This is what happens when you erase the word woman from your reporting. You disseminate inaccuracies and falsehoods. If you prioritize an ideology over giving clear and accurate information, you aren't journalists, you're propagandists. So she's saying that the reason why cervical cancer screening rates are down is because of inclusive language, basically. That's what she's saying. Does she know that my wife, who's the same age as me and is a cis woman, gets her cervical screening reminders, and it is up to her to make that decision on whether to go and get them or not? It's nothing to do with how the media reports using the word woman in a title or not. My wife is aware that she has a cervix and should get a cervical screening, and she gets her reminder letters to then go and do that. If there is a lack of uptake of people getting cervical cancer screening, that is not trans people's fault. I should do it. The only reason I know when it should happen is because my wife gets reminders and we're a very similar age. I do not get reminders. Like, there's no acknowledgement of like trans men in this kind of context just being completely forgotten as requiring healthcare. And it's not because we're women, it's because there is variation across human beings, and some people are just very behind with that. If there is an issue with people getting cervical cancer screenings done and the rate declining, is nothing to do with inclusive language or trans people. And by saying that that's what it's to do with is just going to detract from genuinely what's going on and spending time investigating what's going on and trying to repair that. The transphobia runs so deep. It's ridiculous. Okay, I don't know if you've seen the Glastonbury thing where JK Rowling was on this mural. She was on a mural at Glastonbury which showed a bunch of bigots, billionaires, etc. being sent to Mars to be like, get them off the planet, don't want them here, we don't agree with them. So it's got people like Jeff Bezos, Mark Zuckerberg, Elon Musk, Donald Trump, JK Rowling. There are others. So if you take a trip to Glastonbury's Block 9 this year, you'll be met with a mural that depicts JK Rowling and an array of notable figures boarding a spaceship to Mars. The mural is part of a collaboration between Block 9 and led by Donkeys, a British political campaign group. The installation depicts the likes of Elon Musk, Mark Zuckerberg and Donald Trump and Benjamin Netanyahu sporting orange spacesuits boarding a spaceship to Mars. The tech bros want to go to Mars, so we're sending them there. There's room on the rocket for a few more souls, so they're being joined by Trump, Netanyahu, Vance, Farage and Rowling. Just some of the people who in recent years have made life on Earth more difficult for the rest of us. And JK Rowling responded to it going, I'm really confused. Am I supposed to feel insulted? That's the coolest I've ever looked in my life. Oh yes, because every great feminist wants to be put on a spaceship and be shown on a board alongside the likes of Trump and Elon Musk smoking a cigar because they've taken that pose she did on the super yacht, and JD Vance and Farage. Like, yes, you look so cool being in an orange spacesuit with these people. Yes, never cooler in your entire life, smoking a cigar about to get on Mars with a bunch of misogynistic billionaires. I think somebody should have thought through their response a little bit better. And that's it for today's video. Thank you so much for watching. Also, don't forget to go download iTunes journey, you can click the link in the description box or scan this very handy QR code. Go on, give it a scan. You can scan it now because you won't miss the video. If you were too worried to scan it earlier, you should definitely scan it right now. Go. Thank you. And thank you so much for watching today's video. If you liked it, think about giving a thumbs up and subscribing, but no pressure if not. And you can see some names going up the screen as well. A big thank you to my Patreons and a big shout out to my top tier Patreons. Albar, Chloe, Elden K, Gosco, Iona Balash, Jesse Entwistle, Marv Mallow, Max Makes Mods, Night Soul, Nesta, Rachel Raptor, Randy, River Champagne, Ry Loves Rory, Sienna Lamb, Slayer, Sugar Joe, The Third Hat Man, TNS Mum, Sally Drew, and Sarah Hobbs. Thank you so much. As always, thank you so much for watching. I'll see you next time. Much love. Bye.